The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, activated its response force for the first time ever on Friday. NATO's Twitter account announced Friday, "We are deploying elements of the NATO response force." NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, General Tod Wolters, said in a statement shared with CNN, "This is a historic moment and the very first time the alliance has employed these high-readiness forces in a deterrence and defense role. They represent a flexible, combat-credible force that can be employed in multiple ways, and we're utilizing fully their intent agility. These deterrence measures are prudent and enhance our speed, responsiveness, and capability to shield and protect the 1 billion citizens we swore to protect." Activation comes as Moscow warned Finland and Sweden against joining NATO, a move that it said would have serious military-political repercussion. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes what does the activation of NATO's response force mean. Let's get into the details. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, is an intergovernmental military alliance between 28 European countries and 2 North American countries. Established in the aftermath of World War II, the organization implements the North Atlantic Treaty that was signed on the 4th of April, 1949. NATO constitutes a system of collective security whereby its independent member states agree to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external party. The NATO headquarters are located in Brussels, Belgium, while the headquarters of Allied Command Operations is near Mons, Belgium. NATO Response Force, or NRF, is a rapid reaction, multinational force comprising land, air, sea, and special forces units that falls under the command of the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe and is designed to be ready for rapid deployment in case of a conflict. Rotating forces through the NRF requires nations to meet the demanding standards needed for collective defense and expeditionary operations. As these standards are very high, participating in the NRF is preceded by a 6-month NATO exercise program in order to integrate and standardize the various national contingents. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg stated Russia now poses a new threat to European security. Stoltenberg said, "The Kremlin's objectives are not limited to Ukraine," referring to 2 draft treaties presented by Putin in December, calling for a withdrawal of all NATO forces from member states that joined after 1997, as well as blocking any future NATO membership. NATO and the United States have rejected Russia's demands, which Putin has stated were based on Russian security concerns. Given Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Stoltenberg said the alliance had to take Putin's threat of non-compliance seriously and shore up the eastern flank of the alliance, which borders Russia and Belarus, where tens of thousands of Russian troops are operating. Stoltenberg said, "If we don't meet the demands, there will be what they call military technical consequences. So we have to take this seriously. And that's exactly why we are now deploying the NATO response force for the first time in a collective defense." The full NATO response force consists of about 40,000 troops. It's to be noted that the NRF has tripled since Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014. Jens Stoltenberg said some of the NRF air component was already active, while some land troops would be ready in a few days. The Secretary General said the alliance continued to show unity in its support for NATO partner Ukraine. NATO allies have and continue to provide support and different types of equipment to Ukraine, he said. Allies announced and also informed other allies about the type of weapons, the type of support, and some of that also includes air defense systems. The statement called the NRF movements preventive, proportionate, and non-escalatory. Responding to reports that Ukraine had agreed to begin peace talks with Russia in Minsk, Stoltenberg said Moscow had an easy path to peace. If they want peace, they just stop attacking Ukraine. In a statement issued by NATO on February 25th, the alliance condemned Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and called on Russia to immediately cease its military assault, to withdraw all its forces from Ukraine, and to turn back from the path of aggression it's chosen. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance needs to do more to deter Russia amid its ongoing Ukraine invasion. Stoltenberg said, "We must stand ready to do more, even if it means we have to pay the price, because we're in this for the long haul. We have to take this seriously, and that's exactly why we're now deploying the NATO response force for the first time in a collective defense context." The response force is being activated as part of larger deterrence efforts along NATO's Eastern Front. Activation of the response troops does not mean that any U.S. or NATO troops will go into Ukraine, which is not a member. The idea seems to be to create a red line at the border between Ukraine and NATO member states that can avoid a spillover and is a show that NATO allies are willing to stand together. The move will enable NATO to move troops and military assets as necessary. It's to be noted that the combined military spending of all NATO members in 2020 constituted over 57% of the global nominal total, and members agreed that their aim is to reach or maintain the target defense spending of at least 2% of their GDP by 2024. It remains to be seen if more maneuvering by NRF is seen in the coming days.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.